السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه اللهم لا سهلا إلا ما جعلته سهلا. We're gonna be discussing about helping your kids or your child or yourself to identify the difficult letters of the Quran. Sometimes when people read the Quran, it's the same Quran, but we have different fonts in which the Quran is written. Some we have, the Indo-Pakistani version, we have the Uthmani version, and one of the key things is whenever you help your child to learn to read the Quran, you want to make sure that they are using the same Quran. They're using the same Quran font. So you don't want to be using the Uthmani script and later on change it to the Indo-Pakistani script and changing different kind of the font of the Quran. So it's kind of like sometimes get confusing to the kids when they learn to read the Quran. So when you start learning the Quran or start teaching the Quran to your kids or your students, you want to make sure that you use the same Quran font or the same format over the time so that the kids do not get confused with the learning, right? So inshallah today I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about how you can help your student or you yourself can be able to identify the different forms of the Quran letters. And sometimes the Uthmani, I'm going to be using today the Uthmani script as an example. And sometimes the Uthmani script and many other scripts of the Quran, they've got different ways in which the letters or the words sometimes get contracted in different forms. And whenever they get contracted this way, it's become very tough for a lot of people, a lot of the kids or students who are just learning to read the Quran to be able to identify the different shapes of the letters, right? So today I'll be using the Uthmani script as an example, and we're going to do an exercise on how you can help your child overcome this challenge when you want to teach them to learn to read the Quran. First thing, we have to know that the Quran letters, they're in different forms based on the beginning or the end of the word, right? So for instance, the alif, you see these are different forms, so you got to let them know and see and check and make them that they understand and they're able to kind of differentiate between the different structures at different point in the word of the Quran. And sometimes it's not gonna be just you showing them all this. You've got to have them practice it, read it, and even write them out, so to be able to identify those letters and be able to pronounce them very well whenever they get to the words of the Quran, right? So you see here, this is a bat. So this is just a summary of different shapes of the bat, right? So although this one is in the beginning and in the middle of an ayah, right? So you've got to show them all this. So this is ba. So student watching me right now, or those who are watching later. So this is ba, a ta, right? So tha. So all these have different different shapes, but they don't have different pronunciation, right? They have the same articulation, but they have different shapes. So like ta and tha, right? So you have to know that they might differ in terms of their structure in the middle of a word, or at the beginning of the word, or at the end of the word. So alif, for instance, can be like this in the middle. So this is an alif. So alif can be like this in the middle of an ayah, right? So this is alif in the beginning of an ayah, of a word. So this alif can be like this in the middle. So one thing you should know, that kids, whenever alif is like this, it doesn't have anything joined together to the end of it. So alif can have something joined before it, but it doesn't always have anything joined at the end of it. So a lot of the kids, they kind of take this alif for lam. So lam, you'll see whenever lam is in the middle, is always joined with something, as we're going to check on lam later on, right? So this is an alif. Alif is one of those letters that do not have anything joined to them at the end. So we have like 6 of those letters, or 7 of them, that whenever they are written, they don't have anything at the end of it. So they are always not attached to anything. They are not joined to anything. So the alif is one of them. When it's written like this in the full form, it doesn't have anything joined to it, right? It doesn't have anything joined to it. And alif, so apart from alif, dal, ra, za, right, and the wa, also they don't have anything joined to them at the end, right? So kids and anyone learning the Quran will have to make that difference. So the letter of the Quran, that differs in terms of when they are in the middle, in the beginning, and at the end of the word, right? So many people know when they are separate, when they are not joined together, but most oftentimes a lot of the kids, a lot of new student beginners, or those who are learning to become more fluent in recitation, they have this challenge not being able to identify the different forms of the letters in the middle or at the end of a word, right? So for those who are joining from Instagram, I'm presenting this onto our expert Quran readers group. So if you would like to get to see the presentation, I can't present it right now on my Instagram page. I'm gonna do that later, inshallah. So I have the presentation in our expert Quran group. So tap the link or join the group. Comment below to join the group, and you can have access to our weekly webinars on how to recite and perfect your Quran recitation. Right. So this is tha, right? So the tha, could be written in different forms, right? And jim also. So you've got to know how the letter is being written in the middle, in the beginning, and or at the end of a word. So I said sometimes the letters of the Quran or the words are contracted. We're gonna get an example of how some letters are contracted and how you can help your child, or how you yourself, you're learning to read the Quran, can be able to identify how many letters you have in a word. So the first things, whenever you have a contracted word of the Quran, is to identify how many letters you got there. And there are ways for you to get to know how many letters. We're going to show that very shortly, right? So this is kha, and these are all the letters and how they are in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the word, right? And this is the, dhal. You see that? So dhal doesn't have anything joined to the end of it. Likewise ra, right? Likewise zain, likewise dhal. So alif doesn't have anything joined to the end of it. So you can have something joined before it, but it's not always having anything joined at the end of it, right? So alif doesn't have anything joined to the end, and also dhal is always free at the end. It doesn't have anything joined to the end of it. So dhal, dal, dhal, ra, zain. So that's 5 letters. Then wa. So wa also, whenever it's written, it doesn't have anything joined to the end. So you might have something joined before it, but they don't have anything joined at the end, right? So sin, shin, they can be joined in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of a word as well. Okay, so ta, dha, bod, and all that, these are the different forms of those letters. So most oftentimes, a lot of the kids, a lot of the students, they forget that the ayn, when it's written on its own, when it's not joined, is different from when it's written in the beginning. You see that? It's in the beginning here, it's written in a very different form, and in the middle it's more different. You see how it looks like? So you got to know the differences. And when teaching the kids to learn to read the Quran and helping them identifying this difficult word letter structure, you don't just teach them once. There are 3 ways to teach the kids. You have to teach them with the auditory learning skills, so you have them touch that letter in different forms and listen to it. And also you have them write it down in different shapes that the letters exist in different position, right? So you've got to ask them, write them down, like have some kind of tactical feeling of the words, of the letters in different shapes and different positions of the words, and you've got to have them see it, and you've got to have them listen to it as well. So you've got to combine all those 3 learning routes to help them gain adequate memory of these Quran letters. So the ghain, you see the ghain, it's different from the a because it has just one single dot, right? So this is the ghain, right? It has one single dot, but it's similar to the ain, just that the dot on the ghain makes it different, right? So, and they have the same structure in the middle and the beginning. And the fa, and another letter that kind of confuse a lot of the kids is the kaf. So whenever the kaf is written in the beginning, you see it has a little hamza into his belly. But whenever it's written in the beginning, it's not like that. You see this is a kaf. This is also a kaf in the middle, but you see it in the beginning, at the end. So it looks very similar, like what it was in the when it's on its own by itself. But whenever kaf is written in the beginning of the word, or it's written in the middle of the word, it's much different, right? So you have to kind of reinforce this and practice it very often to the kids so that they can have a very strong memory of these letters. Another very confusing letters that the kids have challenge with is the ha. And you see the ha here, this is ha, right? It looks like a small circle, on its own here. It looks like a small circle here, and you see it here as well. So the ha can have like almost 5 different shapes, right? So the ha, so we have to know those letters are really challenging for kids to learn to identify in difficult Quran words. Also, hamza is very important. A lot of people learning the Quran make mistakes because hamza, there's a difference between the number of letters of the Quran alphabet and the Arabic alphabet. So the Quran Tajweed alphabet, they've got 29 letters, right? But the Arabic alphabet got 28. So the difference between the Tajweed and the Quran, the Tajweed Quran alphabet and the Arabic alphabet is that in the Quran Tajweed alphabet, the Hamza and the Alif have different purpose in the Quran recitation. And most oftentimes in Arabic, it's only just put on top of the Hamza is always put on top of the Alif, right? So the Hamza has a different makhraj. It has a different articulation point from the mouth. So the Hamza comes from the deep part of the throat, from aqsa al-hilq, That's where the hamza comes from. But the alif is used as an elongation tool in the Quran, and its own pronunciation comes from the jawf, right? The jawf is the space between the roof of the mouth and the tongue, and that's where the letters of mad, alif, waw, ya, these are 3 letters of mad, they come out from that region. So but the hamza comes out from a different region. So in Tajweed, the articulation of the hamza and the alif are different. So as a result, the Quran Tajweed letters are 29, why those of the Arabic are 28. So these are some of the things that you have to get to know whenever you learn to read the Quran or teach kids. And sometimes you see, whenever hamza is on top of an alif, you pronounce the hamza. Whenever hamza is on top of a wa, you pronounce the hamza. Whenever hamza is on top of a ya, you pronounce the hamza. Alright, so these are some of the nitty-gritty, very tiny details that you have to learn when learning to read the Quran. So the hamza, when on top of an alif, it's pronounced as hamza. Whenever an hamza is on top of a wa, like we see here right now, it's going to be pronounced like an hamza. The hamza is going to be pronounced. You don't pronounce the wa. Alright, and this situation here as well, you see, you pronounce the hamza. And you pronounce the hamza. So the rule of thumb is whenever you see the hamza on top of any letter, you have to pronounce the hamza. Or you see the hamza at the bottom of any letter, you've got to pronounce the hamza, right? So there are 6 letters that do not have anything joined at the end of them: waw, dal, thal, ra, zain, and alif. They don't have anything joined at the end of them. Right? So you've got to know these, and you've got to be aware of this whenever you learn the Quran. And these are the basics that you have to learn. In our accelerated Quran reading program, we take for like 2 weeks. In the beginning of the program, to teach the kids the letters, the articulation of the letters, the makharij, and how to identify the different structures of the letters and different words of the Quran. So this is very essential, because the kids, or anyone learning the Quran, not just the kids, anyone learning the Quran, if you don't understand the basics of a language, then you're gonna have challenge later on learning this language, right? So the letters, the structures, and sometimes people will think, oh yeah, we are learning the qaida for 2-3 years. So the qaida only teaches the Quran Arabic component, and sometimes, most oftentimes, you're not being taught the Tajweed component of the Quran with the qaida, and that's why the qaida is deficient sometimes to make you become a fluent Quran reciter. So in our accelerated Quran reading program, what we do is that we combine both the Arabic component and the Tajweed component together to teach the kids at the same time. So the kids do not have to learn the qaida for 2-3 years and go back and learn the Tajweed another for 2-3 years, right? So they got to learn everything together, right? So if you're interested in joining the program for your child, comment Quran below now, reach out to you, inshallah. So the hamza, whenever it's on the top of a letter, whenever it's on the top of any letter, waw, ya, alif, the hamza will be pronounced. And you see the ya here, so the ya also has different shapes. So this is not something that the kids can learn here right now in the class right now, but you have to know and be aware of this, and know this is how to teach the kids. So you see the different forms of kha, you've got to show them this, and they've got to write it down. I said something earlier about helping them achieve this adequate memory of the Quran letters. Just showing them on the screen, or showing them, having them to listen to you, it's not going to do the work. So you've got to add extra 2 layers of learning process. So you've got to have them write it out, and you've got to have them listen to it, often, maybe from an app or something like that. We've got all those resources in our program for the kids to learn, for those who are just getting started to learn to read the Quran, right? So these are the letters, and you see, you can show them all the letters, different shapes and different forms in different situations, right? In the middle, in the beginning of an ayah, of a word, and so these are so very essential for you to get to know whenever you teach your kids, or you want to help your child to learn to read the Quran. You see the hamza here, this is an hamza, you see, in different forms, kha, ta. And another thing is the ta here. So we have 2 types of ta. We have a ta'u al-maftuha and ta'u al-marbuta. So the flat ta, or the open ta, and the round ta, or the closed ta. So you got to know the different forms of the ta. This is very essential for kids who are just getting started learn to read the Quran. You have to teach them. You have to help them identify these, and you've got to have them practice it very often, right? And you see the ya here. So imagine you seeing this kind of different form of ya. So if you don't know, these are all ya. So you see 5 different forms of ya can be written in different 5 forms. You see. So you see this is ya, and ya, and you see ha. From my experience teaching kids, a lot of the kids, they usually have challenge at identifying this kind of structure in the words of the Quran. And this is ha. You see, this is ha. And a lot of the kids have challenge at doing this. So in our program, we try to help them achieve this goal in the beginning of the program, so they don't have issues later on learning the letters or trying to pronounce the Quran words when they have to read fluently on their own. And having known this, I'm going to show you guys one quick example of what, some of the exercises that we help the kids to do in our program when, we teach them the structure of the letters. So you see this here. So this is one of the example of the things we do in our program. For instance, you see these are words of the Quran, and we have them do what we call spot and dots. So this is how many letters. So what we do is that how many letters you got in this word here. So the kids have to identify how many letters first. Right? And the trick for them to be able to identify how many letters is how many harakat you see on this word here. You see wa, is it dhamma, is it fatha, is it fatha? So it already tells you that at least there's a minimum of 3 letters. But there's another letter that doesn't have anything here. And any letter that doesn't have any harakat, it tells you that if the letter is an alif, a ya, or a wa, it tells you that that letter is used for elongation. Right? So we teach the kids in this. So any letter that doesn't have anything, like this one, so you see an harakat on top of each letter. Right? There's ya having dhamma, there's ha, there's alif. Right? The alif doesn't have anything joined to it. So when the kids do this very often and repeatedly, they're able to get used to the Quran words. And you see, this word is a lot difficult for a lot of the kids sometimes. So the kids get confused. Which one comes first? Is it the ya or the ha? Right? So I tell them which one you see that comes first. So this one here, the ya comes before the ha. So you got to know the ya always have 3 dots at the bottom of it. So oh yeah, this is the ya. Right? So the ha has its own edge curved this way. So the ha is not the first letter. So these are the practices that you have to help your kids to learn. And the kid thing, a lot of the kids now, some of you might have kids that already know how to read the Quran, already identify the letters, but they're having challenge being fluent and getting faster and getting the Tajweed. The only thing that they've got to do is practice more, and they've got to do more in independent practice of the of the Quran recitation. And the way we do it, I showed you guys in the webinar last week. We talked about the 3 the memory retention habits of the Quran, and how you can help your child design a well structured Quran learning, and using those key memory strategies I talked about last week. So they've got to do some independent practice on their own and have it recorded, so you see where they're struggling with, what are they struggling with in the Quran recitation. Because when you are with them, sometimes you want to probably help them to pronounce something. If they're struggling, you want to help them. You have that kind of tendencies to do that. But whenever they're doing it on their own, you're not there. You want them to develop themselves, and so by you having them record those recitation, where the challenge is. What problem they're having with their recitation. Then you can use that to help them in the subsequent classes, inshallah. So this is where I'm going to stop today. Talking about how to help your child to learn to read the Quran, and help them identifying the difficult letters of the Quran, and also helping them become a fluent Quran reciter, improving on their speed and accuracy of the Quran recitation. If you'd like to know more about this and want to join our program for a child, comment Quran below, then inshallah I'm going to reach out to you as soon as possible. Although we don't have any enrollment going on right now, we have enrollment going on starting May 1st for anyone that wants to join our program. Comment Quran below and I'll reach out to you, inshallah. If anyone have any question, let me know right now, and I can attend to the question within 2 minutes I've got for the class. So if no question, inshallah, whenever you watch this video later on, just comment Quran. And you might have other questions. You might not want to enroll your child. You might want to know more better on how to help your child identify the difficult Quran letters. Inshallah, we're going to help you out with that, helping you design a way to design a curriculum for your child at home to teach them on your own. So if you want to do that, so just comment Quran below in the app, in this video, under this video, and inshallah we'll reach out to you bi'idhnillah. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.